This is probably going to be the most emotionally draining forum I think I'll ever do, and I suspect the experience will be the same for other people. But our job here today is to talk through this predominantly from the point of view of being theatre studies students who are studying 3.3. So if you'll excuse me, that will be the focus of the questions that I will be driving and the discussion. But first of all, I'd really like to say to you that as soon as possible and at any stage, this is your chance to ask questions to these amazing people. So do get your hands up. Eventually we will have two people who will have microphones because the whole conversation today is being recorded. And we're going to start very much talking to the actors because, as you can imagine, they're probably a little bit drained. So we're going to give them hopefully about 15 minutes of their time, thank them, and then we'll move on and talk to Iain and Andrew for a bit longer and talk about the whole production. So just to give you a little pattern of where we're at. So I'm going to open up to any of the actors, and I wish I could name all of them. I've just met them and I won't remember names, so I'll get them to introduce themselves when they talk. The first thing I'd like to find out is those actors that were involved in the original production back in 2013. Are there many of the performers here who are involved in that? Maybe just a really nice starting point would perhaps be to say, has the production moved much from that experience to this one for you personally and in terms of the image of the whole thing? Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Matt Sunderland playing Saggy Birdles and Turnkey, Dog, Tree, Rock. No, Rock? Do I play? No, I don't play Rock. How you know I do? I was in the original production, actually from New Zealand, and
production wasn't.
No, but it's a different crew, different cast and everything. Well, a lot of them different, but it's to me, in my mind, it's evolved since the original production, whether that's just the benefit of having worked it once before and stuff, but I think it's testament to all of the guys and girls that have joined us this time around, and everything that they bring to it. In my mind, has really lifted it. And it was that first season was the culmination of 2 months workshopping as well. So it was all very testing the waters when we opened that first season. So this time around, I think everyone was a bit more, confident with it all, and So no, it's to me, it's really evolved, and so it's been great.
The first time we did it, as Matt just said, there was 2 months of workshopping. So as you can see, it's a very physical play, and it's an ensemble piece, and in the sense that many of us play a variety of roles. We not only play human beings, we also play animals and all sorts of things, as we said, trees, etc. And how those sorts of things occurred, those sorts of things evolved in that initial rehearsal period. So when we came back for the second version of this play, we essentially had most of that already established. So we had rather a short rehearsal period. And so approximately half the cast was replaced because other actors weren't available and for a variety of reasons. And so they sort of kind of fitted into the way we did it, essentially. But naturally, if you replace one actor with another actor, be they male or female, you're going to get a different performance. So it's naturally going to affect the play differently. However, the play itself is essentially the same.
I must say, there's much more of a sense of family this time amongst the group and amongst the company. Before every show, we get together and talk through anything that might have happened for anyone during the day, or anything that we want to bear in mind during the performance. We just call it a coming together, and it's just checking that everyone is okay, because it's incredibly emotionally draining for the actors having to enact this massacre every night on stage. And the strength that's come from the generosity of the Indigenous cast in helping everybody feel like they're not enacting this massacre, or that they feel sure in enacting violence on other people. Likewise, supporting people who have that violence enacted on them is a really intrinsic thing that feels very different on this. And the quality of the leadership from the Indigenous cast in this instance has been extraordinary and a great, feels like the story is all the better for that.
Could I follow that then and ask you, or get any of the actors to talk about the important things you need to do before each performance and then what you feel you need to do afterwards? Because as you said, it's such a demanding situation.
This bit. What we do, like Iain said, we come together. But I think because of different roles everybody plays, I think different ways of preparing for your role. My role is quite demanding, so there's a lot in it. So I try and chill out in my room. Or I usually at half time or quarter time or something have a sleep. I try to, like a power nap. So I just get mic'd up and just lay there and just chill, because it is a very demanding role. So a lot of us do different things to get ourselves motivated to do the production, because it's a sad story to tell, really, in the end. I'm talking about people dying. And not only people, I'm talking about Indigenous people dying. So trying to get to that place, because in the end, it cracks me up. Having to describe a death or a massacre is a hard thing to do. And trying to keep a straight face and trying to do it with a straight face is not a happy task. So try and get myself to do other things, or just chill myself out, give myself the energy and the strength to be able to tell the story to you guys.
It's important to bear in mind that these events took place. They actually happened. We've taken an event that took place along the Hawkesbury River, and it's been welded into a novel form, but they are based on true events along the Hawkesbury River in this particular area. They happened. So it's not just, it's a novel, and then Andrew has welded the elements of that novel into a fantastic play, and created, these two wonderful families. But the essential events that we describe, what we act out, happened. People were poisoned with flour. People were massacred because the white folks wanted their land. These things happened.
Was there performing today to a predominantly young audience? Did that have a different effect on the way it was sort of performed and the responses that you got? Would anyone like to talk a little bit about that?
Well, for me personally, I've got family members, and they're sitting right here in the front. So all the Fitzroy girls, and these girls come up from a community that still, the massacres are still quite relevant. It was only in the 1930s and the 20s that these things happen in our country, in the Kimberley, where we come from. Jandamara is a person that come from the Kimberley. We had massacres in the Great Sandy Desert that people don't know happened. So these girls in front here, and young men, have those stories ingrained in their culture and in their stories, because it did happen. So I was proud for me to perform to them, but also in performing this production, acknowledging all the other massacres that has happened, and acknowledging that it's our story, and we should learn about these massacres that has happened in your country, in your community, in your town, because really in those towns there are history there that you probably don't know about.
Lots of bad things happened all over Australia, especially in this state, Victoria. Out in East Gippsland, there are still places called Massacre Creek and things like this that need their names changed. I've been acting for 30 odd years, and it's extremely painful to do shows like this, because we take on the people who were killed. It's I think it's different for us as blackfellow performers, because we're representing our people. We have our people on our shoulders, and the weight of our communities. I'm a Nyungar from Western Australia. I've been up to Ningalese country. I've sat at that place on the corner, the Margaret and the Fitzroy River, where that big massacre happened. I felt that place. We do shows about massacres. I mean, they need to be told. It's extremely painful to tell these stories, but unfortunately, the history that you learn in your schools, and I learnt in my school when I went to school, was a prefabricated truth. History is written by the victors. And it's up to you to find out the truth about really what happened in this country. A lot of whites, we've had so many young fellas who were in Brisbane, 800 odd, or was it Sydney? We had so many young fellas come to see the show, and it had changed their whole attitudes towards black fellas, and the black fellas were so empowered. They felt so strong in seeing a story done the way this is done. But these white kids, there's not only white kids, but children who, young adults who come from other countries who don't know the history of this country really need to learn this history of this country, because you are truly living in the blessed place on earth, and we don't come from anywhere else. We belong to this place. It's up to you. You're our future, so it's up to you to make that change.
If I could sort of move in part of the direction of that discussion to do with the characterisation. In the case of the characters out of the novel that Kate initially wrote, we have the perspective of the Thornhills and the other settlers, etc. So I'd like to ask those who played the settler characters where they drew most of their inspiration for the characterisation. Was it the novel? Was it Andrew's play, or perhaps other avenues? And to counter that, I'd be interested in those who represented the Darug people to talk about, again, therefore, how they drew on their characters. Was it just drawing from an immediate experience, or did they look back into their own stories, etc., to draw on their characters?
Hello, my name's Georgia Adams and I play Sal. And as an actor, the first thing I will always do is go through the script, the story that we're telling, and find out what every other character says about the person I'm going to play, because there's often so much in that. So that was one of the first things. And I spent quite a bit of time just in the run-up to starting rehearsals reading Kate's book again, but I stopped reading at the point that the story of the play starts. So I spent quite a bit of time reading through the chapters about London and working on the history of the relationship between Will and I, because they've known each other since childhood. So it was really lovely to read through that and put that together that way. But I wanted to stop where the book met the beginning point of the play, because the book and the play are different. They're not the same. It is that story and it is these people, but it's structured differently, it's put together differently. And I didn't want to have things going on in my head that were from the novel and not our template, our script, and Andrew's telling of this story. So that was a really lovely thing to have a book where I could go back and read about her childhood, read about her parents, read about her family. I then, just to try and work out for myself, or to connect for myself, I spent a few weeks finding pieces of music that worked for me, and I never went and watched the film, but the Jane Campion's movie, The Piano, I remember from when I saw it, images of her on a ship and on a rough coast, and a woman it's a different period in time, but it's similar. So I found a few pieces of music from that. I found traditional English music that felt like it would key in songs about rivers. I found songs, there was a song I was listening to, which is Paul Kelly, and I thought Kev Carmody singing a song. Can you please tell me the name of the film?
This Land.
This Land. The song is This Land, and it's two voices telling... parts. I'm getting to that, man. It's two voices telling the same story. And that song, when I found it, I went, oh my Lord, this is pretty much our play. It starts with Paul Kelly singing the white man's story. This land is my land. I own this land. Talking about fences, talking about all those sorts of things. And then the second voice comes in, and I found out not long ago, it's actually Kelton singing that second voice. And the contrast is, the white man is singing, this land is my land, and Kelton is singing, this land is me. And that stark difference for me in that song really resonated, and hearing that story in that song was something I still often listen to before the show. There's also an English folk band called the Waterboys, and it's a song called Stolen Child, and it's traditional English sounding instruments, but it is a story of a child somewhere being taken. And so there were lots of levels where some of it's really literal, going, what's your history, what's your past? Other parts of it are just going, what thing can I listen to, hear, read, look at that just connects me emotionally to who I'm building? And then the job beyond that is to get on the floor and make as much eye contact with the people in the room and work out where our hearts go in those moments together, and let that happen differently but similarly every night.
Well, just a brief thing. When we did the first production, because there was there was a much longer rehearsal period, and we were developing the play then, because we really didn't know how we were going to play these dogs or, anything. We didn't know really how we were going to tell the story, really. The director and the writer may have, but we didn't. Anyway, there were books. I remember there was this big table, and we all would sit around it, and if we all had a bit of time off, there were lots and lots of books. And essentially there are lots of books by Kate Grenville, because I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's not just The Secret River. She wrote sequels to it, and she wrote also how she researched the stories, etc., because she began this by researching her own family and discovered all these stories and then decided to put them into novel form. But there were lots of books. So whenever we had spare time, we would just be devouring these books. And I think all of us had a copy of The Secret River, and we're reading that as well. But we just sort of accumulated so much information during that rehearsal period.
Thornhill.
So similarly to Georgia, I mean, you have this fantastic text that Andrew has abstracted from the novel. I found myself in the first time, because I've done this both times now, the first time, similarly to Georgia, reading that first bit, which chronicles the life and, the desperation of Will to, support the love of his life and the god-awful circumstance that he finds himself in. And the one thing that I'm always taken with how Will ends up here is the bravery of Sel, and that moment where she not only gets him off, from being hung, but also goes on the boat, has a kid, comes over here, quite bravely finds her man, sets up a shop, does all these other things. And all of these things are before the play begins. But in terms of this production, a lot of my performance is through Ningley's beautiful narration and the imagery. So for me, I needed to be very specific about what I'm looking at, rather than when I'm going to Darky Creek or, when it's all different moments. I visualize stuff, and that detail, that kind of work that you can do is something that fuels your heart and soul that goes through this. This is a really difficult story to portray, William. He isn't a good man. He may have started as a good man, but what he does at the end is bloody awful. And he's, overrun by greed, desire, and all of those really fastidious things. And then the fear of the unknown. And one of the points of this production, I think, is the kids and the hope of the kids and the way that they interact. So in portraying Will, I need to be getting out of the road of making too many decisions about whether he's right or wrong at the end. And it's hard when you are against what the man is doing. So it's been a difficult journey, a long journey for me within this production, but we are really proud of it. And I am enormously proud to be on stage with these brave, courageous people. And every night we do come together and we give everything we've got. And this story needs to be told. You need to go back home. You need to find out who your mobs were. And you need to find out what happened. And know. And tell people. And if we can start that conversation, then maybe racism in this country will, go away. But start the conversation and be interested. That's...
Wouldn't you say that the character, his character pays an enormous price for his acquisitiveness, if you like, his land grabbing, all those sorts of things. His and the marriage absolutely suffer appallingly because of the secrets that must be banked down, the stories that can't be told. So it is. He doesn't get away scot-free, if you like. It's an enormous burden that he and his wife carry, and the silence that comes afterwards that they just can't bridge the gap. You go for it. I just want to say that.
I think that is the awful moment in this country, the silence. So between Will and Sal is silent. He loses everything. He loses the love of his life. He loses absolutely everything. The man is filled with, guilt, remorse, and, fear of retribution. And his whole days are spent kind of proudly, trying to pompously puff himself up to, portray something that he's not. But that silence that is so poetically said at the end of the play by Sal is the silence that it has gone through our country, that rift. We haven't talked about this. So, yeah.
Kelvin, do you want to talk about Yalamundi in the same way then, please? I hope I've said that right.
They call him Yalamundi, but his name is Yaramundi. Myself, I hadn't seen the play before. The first scene I seen in the TV series, I turned off. I didn't want to see that. I hadn't known anything about it. I didn't see the production in Perth. So I came into this play fresh. 3 weeks rehearsals, I had to learn Darug language. We had an awesome teacher in Richard Green. But I, myself, when I do shows about real people, our people, I'd like to go to the place where it happened. So I went out to Wiseman's Ferry in just out of Sydney. That's the place. His name wasn't Thornhill, it was Wiseman, who did all these awful things. That's such a sad country there. So when I sing that song at the start, when Trevor sings a song at the end, I'm singing to that rock escarpment that I can see. I'm singing to that sad country. I'm singing to those spirits that I know, those people that are no longer there. And I need to go back to that place as soon as I finish this play, so I can sing a song, the song we sing in this play. I can sit on that ground, I've got to cry on that place. I've got to cry for them old people. That's what I do, and that's a part of my preparing and doing, I don't call myself an actor, I call myself a doer. So.
Is that Shaka here actually said, look, hey Marna, no one's singing for the land and no one's talking to the land anymore, you know? It's sometimes you have to have some sort of a relationship or an affinity to something that you belong to. It's always about belonging, you know? We're all different, diverse here, sitting in this room right now. To know where you come from is a very important thing. And Shaka actually really made that point so clear, is that we need to go back to that country and sing to it. We've got to talk to it. Because if you don't, well, there's no belonging for you. Just remember that. In your country, in your town, where you come from, you need to actually learn the language of the country where you come from. Now, the policies are out there for, you know, the education, curricula. Learn your own mob. It's very important. Very important. Make sure you learn that country. Learn the songs from there. Learn the language. Because I tell you what, you know, these fellows here sitting right down here before you, you fellows would never ever actually get to know them unless you know or get to understand them. You know what I mean? You need to do that. And this is what this show is all about. All right? What do you reckon? Yeah. Here. Girl, say something.
Yeah, I guess. Oh, yeah. Hello. There we go. My name's Maddie Madden, and I play Gilligan and Mullary. And yeah, I guess just in preparation for my 2 roles, I'm a new cast member, so it was great to come into a company that knew what they were doing and something that we could all build on as well and evolve and take further. I knew that this would be a really difficult job to do because it's very close to home for all the Indigenous cast, because these aren't events that happened just, you know, to like 1 in 3 every Aboriginal person. This happened to every Aboriginal person, everybody's family. It happened all around the country. So I had to gain strength from especially the women in my family. A difficult scene which I had to do. I had to really talk to my mum and my grandmother about it, because those things happened on both sides of my family, to women in my family. So that was very difficult for me, especially in the rehearsal periods, to try and get strength. And it really empowers me to tell that story, because a lot of the time, women are the silent victims of war. And these things happen to specifically black women because they were black. So it was very important for me to take on this role and to tell that story, as hard as it is, but somebody's got to do it. And that's why I feel like this play, as a family, it's so courageous what everyone is doing, because we're all shedding a bit of light on a very difficult, painful past that needs to become a national conversation. And having a young audience, like Kelton said, we had like over 2,000 kids up in Brisbane, like 800 in Sydney. It's always so electric having a young audience, because young people are very, you can really mold your ideas about experiences, and the experiences you have when you're young, they really shape the person you are. And as you see in the play with young Dick in the Narrabee and Garraway, there was that opportunity, you know, that link that they could have had. And a lot of people did have that back in the day with, you know, Aboriginal people and white people, like the Tom Blackwoods. And yeah, so having you guys in here, it always really excites me to get out there and do a really good show, because you know that it's going to a good home, the story.
Thank you very much. Just because I'm very aware of the time, I'm going to do a broad thank you to the actors who have come out here today, and say thank you. You've given more than enough time. If any of you would like to stay a little longer, I'm sure the kids would love to fire questions, but if you need to rest and you need to move on and have a break, can we all give them a round of applause, please, for giving up? So thank you very much. Thank you. If any of you would like to go and have a rest. If you want to stay, you're more than welcome to stay a little bit longer, but thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we certainly are going to have a couple of the actors, so I'm going to throw this chance to you. If you'd like to direct a question to one of the actors specifically, then please get your hand up and we'll try and get a microphone to you. We have one in the middle here. Thank you very much. Kelton, do you want to come in? Are you happy to come? You happy? They come. Sorry, my apologies. Our first question is right here in the middle.
Hello? Can you, yeah, awesome. This is more directed to the characters of Yarra, Mullum and Thornhill, but I was just wondering what like your objective or like super objectives might have been, like for the play.
I just have a heaps of empathy towards the First Fleet when they came here because, you know, most of those guys were kicked out of London for, you know, just to try and survive. And coming here to this country of ours, you know, we've opened our arms up quite generously, and that's how it all began like that. And I think that's the most important thing, or the most pivotal thing about this show, is that we show empathy towards each other, you know. That's the most important thing. Well, you're Yellow or Yarramuddy, you know, very, very, you know, strength through the question of where we come from as an, you know, native Australian history, to have that beautiful, in the way in which Andrew wrote, is that to have that relationship between Thornhill and all those other characters, is to make sure that we're all connected in some sort of way. It's always about connectivity. In our culture, that's what we always make sure, that we try to make sure that we're all in some way connected. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about it, is just understanding that question of how do we look after each other. We need a duty of care for all of us.
Could I pick up on that and ask theatrically how often you felt like scene next to scene or moment to moment was about sort of the connectivity, the idea of the actions of the Darug people and what they were going on, and then seeing the Thornhills and what they were trying to do? Was that a conscious, were you aware of that as you were building scene by scene and performing? Andrew, maybe you'd like to talk about that as the construction of the play.
That sounds like a kind of structural question.
Ladies, I'm not sure if everyone, this is Andrew Bovell, the playwright, so for those who haven't met, please make him feel very, very welcome.
So what we set out to do, we one of the decisions we took very early was that we were going to have the same number of Indigenous characters as white characters, and we did that for political reasons, if you like. This is very much a white story that the Indigenous characters help us to tell. It's told through a white point of view, but we wanted a very strong Indigenous presence on stage. And once we had those equal numbers, the two groups very quickly fell into a kind of family. So in a way, it's the story of two families who live on different sides of the point and actually have much more in common than they do in conflict. They have a very different attitude and relationship to land, but they are essentially concerned with the same things. What are we going to eat tonight? What's the weather like? Are those people on the other side of the point going to go soon, or how long are they going to stay for? That's the kind of conversation both groups are having. So structurally, the story moves between those two family groups. And, you know, if we had our time again, I would like to build up more action for the Darug family and to spend more time with them. But at the moment, there's a kind of dominance of the Thornhill family.
Could you, and excuse me, I will get to more questions. Would you like to talk about the use of the Darug language and the way it's written in the script, and how it's played out, and the potential for translating, subtitles, etc.?
Sure. So I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the book, but in the novel, Kate Grenville tends to describe the Darug characters at a distance and through the eyes of the white characters. So you never get in close and amongst those people. They're always seen from afar. And that's in a way how historically white literature has approached Indigenous material. But for us, where we make theatre and we've got live actors on stage, now you can't have the Indigenous characters up in the back corner being described by the white characters. They've got to have a stake in the drama, an interior life and motivations and objectives, just like anybody else on stage. So, but we couldn't do that unless we had language. And for a while in the process, we thought that there wasn't the Darug language, that it no longer existed. And Richard Green, who's a Darug actor and elder, and came on board to help us make the show, the first thing he says is that's a lie, that there's no Darug language, that it's been destroyed. It exists, it's a living language, and he opened his mouth and he began to sing, and we all got in Darug, and we all got chills up the back of our spine, and I almost cried because I thought, now I know how to do this play. And so with Richard, we built scenes, we built the language around the scenes we needed to tell the other story. Then there was a big question of, okay, do we translate that? Do we have surtitles or subtitles running across the bottom or the top of the stage? And we talked that one through, we tried it out, and essentially in the end it was the decision of the cast with Richard not to do that. Richard, and I believe most of the cast, really wanted the language to speak for itself, and the actors wanted the opportunity to be able to convey through their physicality the meaning of the scene. And I think you understand when Yalamundi and William negotiate about the land, it's very clear that there is a misunderstanding taking place. And what's very moving, I think, for a predominantly white audience is that we understand that without necessarily having a literal understanding of the language. Like, we get what's going on. So we made the choice not to subtitle. If you read the play, it's translated. You can find out what they're saying. But we didn't want to distract people from the drama by having them engaged in an act of translation or looking up. We just wanted them to focus in on what was happening and to experience those interactions as the white characters would have done at the time. But it's also very metaphoric. It's a metaphor for white Australia's failure to understand Indigenous Australia over many generations. And it's a sort of invitation to work harder, really, to understand that dynamic and what is being communicated to us.
Again, I'll open the opportunity for questions from the audience. We have one question here.
Cheers. This is for Nathaniel directly. Based on Thornhill's avaricious desire to have a house, to have a suit, a fireplace in every room, how did you sort of research on that and have the context really influence how you exude all of that?
I didn't say it before, but one of the things was that I went up to the Hawkesbury. I went to the place. So I went to Solomon Wiseman's, which is now a pub, and I went to this house that this man built, out of this granite rock, and I stayed there. I got a real sense of, it was a really claustrophobic place, and I could tell that he, was hiding away from stuff. It didn't seem like a big open, beautiful homestead. In terms of his desire, there's a line in the book which is, Thornhill sees, this place as a blank page in which he can write a new life. And for a man who's come from nothing, literally nothing, and no hope of doing anything, that desire, I could understand and relate to, and I reference back to reading that first part of the book, his growing greed and, wanting more and more and more. His, like you can look at, you can see it, you can read. So I looked at other people that may have happened to, Like at the moment, I think we'd have this Trump guy, I mean, like, look at, that
He's
sort
just
of.
won Florida, I'm sorry to say.
Yeah, Jesus. Anyway.
Sorry.
But one of the other parts of portraying this is this man loves his wife, he loves his kids, and he wants to provide for them. So at his heart, Thornhill is wanting that. He's desperate for that. And I think the fear that comes in from the unknown, that being, the others on the point, and the place also being quite terrifying for him. These people coming from cobblestones and tiny little rooms that they, have to sort of, bunker themselves in, and then suddenly being in this huge, expansive space where, shadows in trees and, cloud formations and just that silence of the place would have been enormous for these people coming from bustling England and, being in such cramped confines, coming over on convict boats, right down in the bottom of the boat, like in that hammock bit, just, bumping your head at night on wood and all of that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that the detail that you put in, the research that you can put in for your role or your roles, if that's what you're asking, is, whichever way that you can look at it, whatever fuels your doable, that doing thing that acting is, something that changes you, that's where I went with that. We sort of went around the roundabout, but of course I've just performed for you guys for 3 hours, so struggling to put sentences together.
Thank you,
No
Nathaniel.
worries.
I want to take advantage of one man we haven't heard from here in the middle, Iain Grandage. Composed and performed this extraordinary soundtrack throughout with the support of the entire cast. Iain, I might, just to get you started, the kids are always interested in the sort of the before and the after, so sort of the build-up to the production. So could you talk about the development soundtrack there, especially that idea of where the searching for the original sounds and then even the metaphor of the piano, etc.
Yeah.
And then perhaps how you then involve the actors in that process afterwards.
Yeah, the interesting thing about theatre that Andrew alluded to and some of the actors have is that it doesn't need to be realist like television or film. Like these are distilled ideas that you can get. Here we are on a set that's a tree or a cliff or a curtain being pulled back, a white curtain of history being pulled back, revealing an Indigenous history behind it. This is a dark sheet here whitewashed with this story that was here before. There's a single fire there that's a shared fire rather than the competitive two fires that the design was at one point. There, in the corner, the piano is the preeminent instrument of Western music. The idea, this, as Georgia said, the piano film talks about this object that people bring as a reminder of home. It's like the equivalent of the white picket fence. It's one of these things that is such a solid thing that doesn't belong in the earth of this country that it felt very interesting for me to try and create a score that by the end I'm playing the piano almost constantly. However, at the very beginning, I try and play the piano as little as possible other than for the settler half of this story. What I had to do was to find ways of playing that piano that still spoke to the Indigenous half of this story. And so hence I was using the bow that you saw. They're just little tiny violin bows and bowing noises, plucking the inside of it so it sounded less Western and less like this settler culture. I'm also a cello player, as you see, and so did a lot of things generally on the female side of the storytelling with the cello. However, that's only one part of it. That's my part of the generation of this music, because there's extraordinary musicians across both the Indigenous cast and the settler cast. Prime amongst them, Richard Green, who sang Darug songs for us that I then incorporated into the score, but amongst the cast themselves, Trevor, who's taken a great lead in providing lots of other vernacular musics, folk musics that kind of really exist on a different, bring a very different energy than me with my very white bread classical music training, and suddenly you get a whole kind of vitality. And I've been educated over the course of this, and hope I get to continue making music with Trev and many other people on this stage for a long time to come. What happened was we would hit a moment in the rehearsal room and we'd go something like this. Often there's only 2 chords. The beginning of Act 2, there's those 3 chords that drive Trev and I just freaking insane. We've only got 3 chords to play, and sometimes that particular rock game goes on 7 or 8 minutes. It's just like, oh, come on. Anyway, so sometimes we don't have quite enough chords. But then there's people like Shaka, who'd never played the bass before, who played double bass during this. Richard Piper, who played Smasher Sullivan, had never picked up a tin whistle before, but I knew that he was a very fine musician, and he just went, yep, let's go for it. And so he learned all of those penny whistle parts. Again, something that speaks to an Irish or Celtic history that we had. Lots of the cast, there's a second piano behind here. So this is a piano, obviously this piano, but this here is a piano as well. It's just that back bit of a piano without any of that. So and that's what many people are playing. All of these instruments were just me asking cast members what they played and what they were happy to play. And just the great thing that Neil Armfield, our director, does is have a sense that this is being built for you now and here. And all of that sense of play that we were, like as a series of actors that we were doing, that's to let you know that we're breathing the same air here. We are living, breathing, contemporary people telling this story now, honouring those people who died back then. But this is us now, and we are a potential way of how we might live in this country together.
Questions again? Is anyone interested? We have a question in the middle again.
My question before was for the actress who played Dula Jim, but I suppose it goes for the whole cast anyway. But I was just wondering if there was any significance in making Dula Jin and Durumbin the same actress?
Yeah, it was a very deliberate choice. Durban has a very important moment in her final narration of the massacre, where she describes what's happened, and then she says, and one other person survived that day, the one they called Julajin, Blackwood's wife. And in that moment, the 2 characters come together. And so my point there, I guess, is that what happened was witnessed and was carried forward through oral history by those who survived. So, and Diribin is a kind of theatrical idea, really, because Diribin is the name of the Hawkesbury River, the Darug name for the Hawkesbury River. So we really wanted to find out, and this is what we can do in the theatre. We can't do that on television, we can't do that on film, but we can make the river talk. So that was our first idea, and then through her narration, she brings Kate Grenville's voice and my voice together in order to tell this story, and she gives us access to the Darug world as well, and to the interior world of the Thornhill. So she's doing a lot out there. But so whilst she was this other thing, this river, it was also important that she was a living, breathing person in the drama. And when she comes with and helps Sal get better with the eel, that's not actually something that was in the novel. From memory, that was Blackwood who brought the eel and helped her get better. But it seemed I wanted more for her to do, have more presence for her in the drama. And here was a story about a woman who could put aside her own concerns about these white people on her land and recognise that a woman needed her help, and she was able to give that freely. So it was a very kind of moving moment. So she's a very powerful figure, and Ningley herself is a very powerful actor and woman from the Kimberley. So she has a certain kind of resonance and strength as a performer. So she was really able to bring something of great weight and meaning and importance, as Kelton does, because they're both new to this cast and they bring a great sort of sense of experience to it. So yes, getting back to your question, it was a deliberate attempt for me to marry the more ethereal idea of embodying the river with the truth that this atrocity was witnessed and there were those that survived who went on to hold the story and pass it on to other generations.
Andrew, if I could stay on your script and in fact direct the question to everyone. Your script is quite unique in the stage directions. I'm not sure if the actors and designers felt that, in the sense of they're quite quite detailed ideas. They're often quite poetic. Is that a conscious thing you did? And then how was that for some of the actors to work with some of those ideas that were being given to the characters, almost subtextual ideas, poetic ideas, etc.? Is that something you did very deliberately?
Yeah, I try and make the what sits in between what is said as powerful and poetic as what is said, and as important. Now, they're not literal instructions to the actors. Sometimes there's, the Darragh pinch the corn. There's a description of physical action. But the rest of it is hopefully a way to inspire the key creatives, the designers, Iain, Neil, and to get them thinking visually and poetically as well. Now, some actors come at, and I do this in all my work, not just Secret River, and some actors come at it and go, no way, I'm not interested. Just tell me what I've got to say and I'll work out the rest. And I have to respect that. But others, I don't know, I won't speak for them. I'll be curious to see how they did respond to such a sort of descriptive way of sort of communicating the story to them. Because these guys are my first audience, and they're the first ones I want to fall in love with this work, because if they don't fall in love with it, the audience can't.
Would any of the actors like to talk about?
You ignored
the
them,
words?
didn't you? You didn't read them.
For me, the experience of having a stage direction that is just instructional, she cries, in brackets, you go, oh God, there's a very specific demand if you're going to take note of it. The difference with the way Andrew puts these stage directions together is that it's storytelling. And when anyone is told a story, either being told a story in this context where we're standing on the stage, bringing a story to life for you, or as the actor reading the page, when there's a level of story in the stage direction, even if you don't end up doing exactly what literally is being described, it gives you as the actor the opportunity to connect emotionally to what the idea is, and to be able to get a picture of somebody's. There's a scripts being written, that a play I did last year, where there was no punctuation, and some lines had four words, some lines had longer, and it was trying to decipher what was going on for the writer in that way is a really different experience, and in some ways quite thrilling, in some ways very challenging. But having a writer that tells the actor a story as well as giving you the words to say is an opportunity to connect emotionally, and I guess to go on your own journey with the template of the script. So for me, it was a really lovely thing to be able to follow and feel as the words move along.
So I'm just trying to remember, I think the play begins with, let us begin with the sound of birds and the sound of running water. Something along that line, and really it was about let us begin in some gentle place, because I know where this drama is going, so let's not go there straight away. And I remember Neil saying, he read that line in the first draft I gave him, and he's got a sense of how he could do the play. That is that there was a gentleness about the world, or that we needed to communicate to the audience before the violence started to happen. And the other really important thing, given where the play goes, was that we found humour in it. And, you know, the children were a great key to that, allowing us to laugh and just to experience the pure joy of a bunch of kids playing with water, which is something we all relate to as Australians, I think.
There are also a lot of, I must say, I found those poetic interstitial programming hugely useful in terms of my job. Also, by the time I came to the script, it was a number of drafts in, and there were many of the songs that you saw, the massacre coming forward to London Bridge, were already in place. There are a series of other songs that we chose to change, like the finale of Act 1, where the Darug and the folk song Little Fishy come together. Originally, that was a far more known folk song, but we ended up finding a song which spoke to the mysteries of water and other resonances in the script. But Andrew has an extraordinary ear, not only for those descriptions, but also about where to place music, because there's a great dread, and I don't know if any of you have written music for theatre, but there's a great dread when a playwright says music plays. There's almost without exception, you just cross it out and you go, I'll decide that. Like, it's one of those things. However, as Georgia described, this, if you feel like you're telling a story, then you know the temperature of it, you know the quality, you know how much drive you need to give it, or how much reflection. And that's where we've been in very great hands with Andrew.
Do we have questions out here? We've got a couple over in fact, we've got quite a few. I'll try and stop interrupting. We've got a couple over on this side just here.
Andrew, just then you spoke about the humour in some of it. Like in Act 1, when the boys are playing with the water, it's a different, like it is a tonal shift, but it's something that's more pleasant. And then towards the beginning of Act 2, some of the tonal shifts are quite jarring, like when Dick is playing with the Indigenous boys and when he's with the Indigenous people, and then he gets belted by Thornhill. Was that purposefully supposed to be a really jarring experience? And I suppose, how did that come about when writing the script? And for the actors, what was that like, going through such a tonal shift? Like, was it really difficult to portray, or was it something you just had to deal with?
I was fortunate enough to get the strap when I was younger. A lot of years I've never tasted it. So I know what it's like. And I jump every night when the boys, they're not actually getting the flogging. Yeah, it's the magic of theatre. No, but I'm a method actor, and in one play I said to a bloke, if I can't get away from the whip, then I get whipped. So I used to get welts all over my legs every night during the performance. That's just the method actor I am. But I do feel that those bring up memories for me every night. I'm jumping backstage when I hear the kids, and I really feel for them, Beautiful team. I hope I've answered your question.
It's actually a moment that's developed from the original production to this one. I've noticed that William, it feels to me, the beating is much more savage. I don't know if that was a conscious choice that you made.
What it means is just that there's this great relationship between young Dick and the native Australians. And then for him to get a hiding just like that, I think that's just one of those dramatical things you have, you put in a piece of theatre. And towards the end, you guys would have already felt it all the way through. It's like, knowing as well how pivotal all these other different characters were with Sal and and Thornhill and the Sons, that whole interaction with, the Indigenous group, you could just really feel the emotions all the way through. Oh, definitely, it is harrowing, reveling for, at the end of it, it's, just those moments, in particular, when he gets the strap, oh, man, it's tearing, because he's hanging out with all the blackfellas.
He's getting punished by his father, not for so much for speaking out of turn, but for daring to, and I think Thornhill's acting out of fear here, because Thornhill's faith, most people are violent, or most parents respond with violence out of fear that they're losing control. And in that moment, I think William feels that he's losing control of his own son. And he comes back and, did I do the wrong thing? And Sal says, no, you've done what is expected of a father. And then a couple of scenes later, he reveals something very telling, which is if one beating hasn't worked it out, another one's not going to. That's a lesson my father never learned. So clearly, William Thornhill, like many of the white people who came here, were brutalised themselves, not just by their parents, but by their poverty and by the English class system. And they got here and they were violent because violence is all they knew. And they then projected that violence upon the landscape and the people that belonged to the landscape, and played out all that trauma. Now, with our kind of contemporary understanding of what kind of damage that does, we think shipload after shipload of highly damaged people suffering post-traumatic disorder arrive in this country and wreak havoc on it and play out all that violence on what was here. But it's a very good observation you make that after the joy, the play starts to turn nasty. Bit scene by scene, we're being drawn towards darker kind of territory. And that's very deliberately done. So what I'm trying to do is give the audience the sense of dread. They can see where this is going, and they can see each step that Thornhill takes, and each time he's presented with a fork in the road, and we want him to take that way. We want him to take Blackwood's advice, but he's, in those speeches where he says he keeps closing away the horrors, hiding them. Every time he does that, we know he is more and more capable of what he does in the end. And those things are meant to jar. They're meant to kind of fill us with dread and the desperate hope that it's not going to happen.
And I guess in terms of portraying the sudden shifts in tone and emotion, it is just I consider my job as an actor to just absolutely be present in every moment. So there's no thinking, there's a big heavy moment coming up in a minute. If there's joy here, we live in the joy. And life does that to us as well. You don't get time to prepare for the big emotional moments in life very often at all. So I think all of us we stay in whatever moment that we're portraying at that time, and then when it swings another way, you just go with it.
As an audience member, I found the usage of the natural elements quite striking, and the free, natural movement that they had, and the lack of control, so the throwing of the water and using smoke to its full capability. Was there any significance in this, in using the real elements instead of simulating with fog or lighting tricks? What was the means?
As you can see, is that this is a beautiful set, designed by people that, what it is that you actually walk away because, it's a blank canvas, and it's all your, because, as performers, as we are here, we try to take your logic away from what's happening, but for a certain context, right? It's up to you to actually exercise your creativity to see what this is about to actually be exploding in your mind. That's the beauty of theatre, And, well, I'm so passionate about that. So, but all those elements, of course, you know, as far as us, ourselves, you know, we're each individual, people that give those ingredients to this whole blank canvas. And that's the beauty of the thing, is that you guys are actually seeing all these other elements, all these other, significance and metaphors, or maybe making up your own analogy. That's what this whole thing is all about. It's beautiful. And, you know, there are things that are quite significant, you know. This is the things that you make up in your mind about what you think. This is what the show's about. And that's what it's all about. And I think that's, in one way, I could, you know, just turn it out to you and say, look, you know, that belongs to you, all you guys, you know. And in a sense, you know, that's what, you know, we love to do and what make great theatre in a sense. What do you reckon, mate?
The choice to use natural elements is very deliberate. So, you know, real mud is used. And that scene is about Sal getting out of a boat and going to the camp. The action's very, very simple, really. But what happens is that Stephen Curtis, as the designer, Neil Umfield as the director, they make Sal walk through buckets of mud and the kids to follow. So what happens is that they actually trample mud across a pristine white floor. Now that is a metaphor in itself for what white people did on this country, to this country. So we clumsily walked our trail as we built this country and messed it up. It's a simple idea, but it's a beautiful idea. And the eucalypt trees, that then provides a beautiful opportunity for Mark Howard to light through. So he can create a lot of effects on that backdrop. And also they're using a lot of smell, charcoal from the fire, ash, smoke from the fire and the eucalypts. Every now and then during the, when you guys come out and do the song at the end of Act 1, you burn your eucalypt there, don't you? Yeah, and in several places during the show. And all of that is to remind us of the place, the Hawkesbury, the bush, which is so present in our country and our psyche and in our storytelling. So we're just trying to bring all those elements to you that we can.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am so sorry, but we are very conscious of time. These people have generously given us more than enough time in front of you, the camera, the YouTube recording that will appear of this. I know there are so many more questions because there is so much to what, and I don't use superlative often, but I've seen a lot of theatre in my time, and this is probably one of the most special pieces I've ever seen. I'm not sure what you think, but would you please thank each and every one of the people that came here today.